Hi, all, and welcome to another of our must listen to series. This is Expose 5. We are not robots, and this is COVID genetic technology. Enjoy the show. Hi, all, and welcome to the Truth, Honour, and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams, and this is part 5 of our series of expose shows that have focused largely on the COVID virus scam that has affected, not infected, the whole globe. A programme that is gigantic in terms of scope, and the sheer depth of planning involved in it and the subsequent cover-up for many years on some front has to be marvelled at. This is what the cabal do. They may all disagree on some points, but agree on key points of operation with a programme and run with it with vigour. We, the people, do not have that level of congruity, and that is why and where we fall short badly. Too hell-bent on dividing and conquering our own, whether by race, gender, nationality, sex, and even in our alternative media, there exists a raft of diversion and division, largely done by leaders of those groups or shows with alternative agendas, not alternative media. In part 1 of this series, we focused on the deaths in nursing homes globally and warned of the technology angle. In part 2, we focused on event 201, which was the planning stage of this, passed off as a simulation, but we all know how AI simulation games eerily turn out to be real events. The fact that our show highlighted and outed Operation Blackout long before the 2020 election it was supposed to interfere with most likely prevented that simulation going forward. Operation Blackout was run by the Israeli-based company Cybereason, with members of the British and American intelligence groups and the law firm in Washington, D.C. called Venables. We also focused how the universities, colleges, research labs, hospitals, and big pharma companies were all involved in being complicit of crimes against humanity. The shift from government to business continuity management, which is decentralization, then they replace it with a new centralized program far worse than the last. It covered the ID part of COVID, the ID 2020 program, which is microchipping. We also revealed the plan and the timeline of it all of which is still on schedule, and also why the publics bow to authority and accept anything and everything they say, which is the key to making this work, known as the Milgram experiment. In part 3, we cover the key player in the vaccine chase, AstraZeneca, and their links with the adrenochrome scandal, along with Trump's tentative links to these companies, including one operating out of the Trump Tower. In part 4, we covered the letter by the New South Wales Police in Australia and asked to distribute it far and wide. That letter uncovered many of the things our show has been revealing over the course of the year. We outed the fallacy of the PCR tests in that show as well, with detailed analysis of why it doesn't work. Highlighted the fact that flu in the southern hemisphere has completely vanished since the recording of COVID infections, which highly suggests they are falsifying all the figures to make things look bad when clearly they are not as they state. Tonight we go deeper again and delve into the science, medical and technological background of this fake pandemic, and as always, expand your thinking and your mind. Right, let's get into it. Now, the gist of all of this fear, lockdown and masks, started from a public perspective by a simple maths error. Whether that mistake was deliberate is always open to debate, but the fact is they simulated and formulated this within a meeting of top elites back in September 2019 under what is known as Event 201. They were even planning ahead as far back as 2018, with the transfer globally of medical devices that are now classified by the World Customs Organization as critical to tackling COVID-19. We will have links showing the evidence of that being posted on the chat page on MeWe and also on Facebook. So with all the fear produced by portal people who are newsreaders from another world, it was a math error and a pretty major thing to make a mistake about, but that's what happened. What hasn't happened is any will to correct the said math error. And from that perspective alone, one must assume it is and was a deliberate ploy to change humanity forever. So where was the math error? First, there was the infection fatality rate, IFR. This is the total number of people who are infected by a disease and the number of them who die. This figure includes those who have no symptoms at all or only very mild symptoms, and those who stayed at home, coughed a bit and watched Outbreak. Then there's the case fatality rate, CFR. This is the number of people suffering serious symptoms who are probably ill enough to be in hospital. Now, clearly people who are seriously ill, which are the cases, are going to have a higher mortality rate than those who are infected, many of whom don't have symptoms. Put simply, all cases are infections, but not all infections are cases. Which means that the CFR will always be far higher than the IFR, and with influenza, the CFR is around 10 times as high as the IFR. And COVID, coincidentally, just seems to have the similar proportion. So the CFR is the total number of deaths divided by the total number of people who have the disease symptoms. In contrast, the IFR is the total number of deaths divided by the total number of people that carry the infection. COVID-19 has an IFR of 1% and CFR of 2 to 3%. More recent data by the CDC and World Health Organization, however, estimates that COVID-19 has an IFR of 0.65% and 0.5 to 1% respectively. The flu has an IFR of 0.1 or lower and CFR of 2 to 3%. Thus, among those who became symptomatic, CFR, COVID-19 is not any deadlier than the flu. This has led to the notion that lockdowns were necessary as COVID-19 is just like the seasonal flu. It's not. And the very fact that a major American learning center cannot tell the difference between 1%, which is 1.0, and 0.1%, which is 0.1, should raise enormous alarm bells. So who started the mistake that led to Fauci, Birx, and others shouting for pandemics, lockdowns, and mask mandates? The Johns Hopkins Centre, who have degrees and PhDs in math deficiency. They, and the fact that they, like all universities, research centres, and institutes, are all in some way connected to and or funded by the CIA, must not be lost in all of this. They, along with the former Five Eyes, which became Global Intelligence Eyes, are the main drivers of this fake infection, and they also who control the media and their fake narratives. Still think this is all real? Check out these two pieces this week. A court in Portugal this week revealed more also. The court stated the PCR test's reliability depends on the number of cycles used and the viral load present. And the court concluded that if someone is tested by PCR as positive when a threshold of 35 cycles or higher is used, as is the rule in most laboratories in Europe and the US, the probability that said person is infected is less than 3%. And the probability that the said result is a false positive is 97%. The court further notes that the cycle threshold used for the PCR tests currently being made in Portugal is unknown. The threshold cycles used in PCR tests in India is between 37 and 40, which makes the reliability of the PCR test less than 3%, and the false positive rate as high as 97% again. Now, this case in Portugal concerned the fact that 4 people who had been quarantined by the regional health authority, and one of these had tested positive for COVID using a PCR test. The other 3 were deemed to have undergone a high risk of exposure. And consequently, the regional health authority decided that all 4 were infectious and a health hazard, which required that they go into isolation. So there is the facts. 97% of the time that positive tests are false positives. 97%. And yet, where is the media on this fact? This came out of a courtroom, remember? Any test, never mind medical of this importance, that delivers a 97% wrong testing result would be scrapped, and yet the whole world is closed down, partially or otherwise based on these false positive test results and the fact that the Johns Hopkins Centre is unable to do basic maths. Don't believe me? Then listen to this top doctor in Canada in the past week.
To S. Peterson. S. Peterson.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dr. Hodkinson. I just want to let you know I'm standing by.
Oh, okay. Well, we would love to hear from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate the opportunity. to address you on this very important matter. What I'm going to say is lay language and blunt. It's counter-narrative, and so you don't immediately think I'm a quack. I'm going to briefly outline my credentials so that you can understand where I'm coming from in terms of knowledge base in all of this. I'm a medical specialist in pathology, which includes virology. I trained at Cambridge University in the UK. I'm the ex-president of the pathology section of the Medical Association. I was previously an assistant professor in the Faculty of Medicine doing a lot of teaching. I was the chairman of the Royal College of Physicians of Canada Examination Committee in Pathology in Ottawa. But more to the point, I'm currently the chairman of a biotechnology company in North Carolina selling a COVID-19 test. And you might say I know a little bit about all of this. The bottom line is simply this. There is utterly unfounded public hysteria driven by the media and politicians. It's outrageous. This is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on an unsuspecting public. There is absolutely nothing that can be done to contain this virus, other than protecting older, more vulnerable people. It should be thought of nothing more than a bad flu season. This is not Ebola. It's not SARS. It's politics playing medicine, and that's a very dangerous game. There is no action of any kind needed other than what happened last year when we felt unwell. We stayed home, we took chicken noodle soup, we didn't visit Granny, and we decided when we would return to work. We didn't need anyone to tell us. Masks are utterly useless. There is no evidence base for their effectiveness whatsoever. Paper masks and fabric masks are simply virtue signaling. They're not even worn effectively most of the time. It's utterly ridiculous seeing these unfortunate, uneducated people, I'm not saying that in a pejorative sense, seeing these people walking around like lemmings, obeying without any knowledge base to put the mask on their face. Social distancing is also useless because COVID is spread by aerosols, which travel 30 meters or so before landing. And closures have had such terrible unintended consequences. Everywhere should be open tomorrow, as was stated in the Great Barrington Declaration that I circulated prior to this meeting. And a word on testing. I do want to emphasize that I'm in the business of testing for COVID. I do want to emphasize that positive test results do not, underlined in neon, mean a clinical infection. It's simply driving public hysteria, and all testing should stop unless you're presenting to hospital with some respiratory problem. All that should be done is to protect the vulnerable and to give them all, in the nursing homes that are under your control, give them all 3,000 to 5,000 international units of vitamin D every day, which has been shown to radically reduce the likelihood of infection. And I would remind you all that using the province's own statistics, the risk of death under 65 in this province is 1 in 300,000. 1 in 300,000. You've got to get a grip on this. The scale of the response that you're undertaking, with no evidence for it, is utterly ridiculous, given the consequences of acting in a way that you're proposing. All kinds of suicides, business closures, funerals, weddings, etc., etc. It's simply outrageous. It's just another bad flu. And you've got to get your minds around that. Let people make their own decisions. You should be totally out of the business of medicine. You're being led down the garden path by the Chief Medical Officer of Health for this province. I'm absolutely outraged that this has reached this level. It should all stop tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that. Again, hopefully all layers of government are listening. We have the least amount of influence, but we definitely appreciate everything that you just had to say. Okay, so...
There you have it, in the doctor's own words. A paper that was analysed, the results of a massive post-lockdown COVID-19 testing drive that included nearly every eligible resident of Wuhan, China, has found no evidence that positive cases without symptoms spread the disease. The analysis published in the scientific journal Nature looked at the results of a screening initiative held between May and June in Wuhan. Now, this is the city where the first cases of the novel coronavirus were detected in late 2019. The origins of the virus have yet to be determined, with new studies suggesting that the disease could have been in Italy as early as September last year. Nearly 10 million people were tested, consisting of 92% of all residents aged 6 years or older. And incredibly, no new symptomatic cases were registered, and only 300 asymptomatic cases were detected. Symptomatic means constituting a symptom as of a disease. That stated no new cases. Asymptomatic means neither causing nor exhibiting symptoms of a disease, stated as only 300 out of 10 million. Subsequent tests of 1,174 close contacts of the asymptomatic cases found and resulted in no new positives. There is no evidence that the identified asymptomatic positive cases were infectious, the paper said, adding that the results of the massive screening program could help health authorities adjust prevention and control strategies in the post-lockdown period. Now, the analysis seems to confirm preliminary findings that were released during the screening program. Professor Liu Zuxun from Wuhan's Huazhong University and Science and Technology said back in June that there was currently no evidence that asymptomatic people were passing the virus on to other people, but cautioned at the time against drawing broad conclusions. The paper's author acknowledged that previous studies had found evidence that asymptomatic individuals were infectious and could become symptomatic later, but theorized that Wuhan residents still testing positive for the virus after the city's strict lockdown had a low quantity of viral loads and therefore were unable to pass the illness on to other people. Oops. Now, that paper comes amid a growing debate over the effectiveness of the COVID-19 restrictions. City and even nationwide lockdowns and mask-wearing mandates have been justified using the argument that even asymptomatic individuals could spread the disease and inadvertently overwhelm the health services, when clearly now all the evidence points to this not being the case. And it says, however, many have argued that the social and economic costs of the lockdown far outweigh any purported benefits and have pointed to evidence that asymptomatic people are not infectious. Back in June, the World Health Organization backtracked after stating that asymptomatic people rarely infect others with COVID-19, saying that there was not enough evidence to back up the claim. And yet lockdowns continue despite all the evidence to the contrary. Now, the Wuhan doctors also mentioned the alleged virus did not surface in Wuhan first and mentioned Italy. And here is a piece backing that claim up. The new coronavirus was circulating in Italy since September 2019. A study by the National Cancer Institute of the Italian city of Milan shows, signaling that COVID-19 might have spread beyond China earlier than previously thought. Well, how can it spread if it happened before the China event? September. Wuhan was November, December, remember? But the Italian researchers' findings published in the INT's scientific magazine Tumori Journal show that 11.6% of 959 healthy volunteers enrolled in a lung cancer screening trial between September 2019 and March 2020 had developed coronavirus antibodies well before February. A further specific SARS-CoV-2 antibodies test was carried out by the University of Siena for the same research titled Unexpected Detection of SARS-CoV-2 Antibodies in the Pre-Pandemic Period in Italy. And it showed that 4 cases dated back to the first week of October were also positive for antibodies neutralizing the virus, meaning that they had been infected in September. And they said this is the main finding. People with no symptoms not only were positive after the serological tests, but also had antibodies able to kill the virus, Mr. Apolloni said. All of which means we don't need a vaccine. Dr. Anthony Fauci, said to be the nation's leading infectious disease expert, there are none, who has guided the US through the pandemic. No, he didn't guide us through anything except a total lie and a fake pandemic. He projected Americans could expect their first doses of an approved coronavirus vaccine as early as April. Frontline healthcare workers are expected to get their first doses by the end of December or early January. Frontline healthcare workers. So the very people who are expected to treat us, healthcare workers, are going to be first for a largely untested vaccine. Does that make any sense whatsoever? And he said, after prioritizing people at risk of infection or severe disease, the healthy, listen closely, the healthy general population can expect first doses of a vaccine starting in April and through July if all continues on track. So they wish to inject healthy patients with a virus that is proven with the Italy story that we create our own antibodies to the said virus. Again, does that make any rational sense? And this flies in the face of all previous vaccines and the length of time it takes to get it out to the public. But then I came across this woman who states herself as an expert and does staged interviews delivering the message of why we need it, but as always, they leave hidden clues. Kelly Kamm, Kamm, Assistant Professor, Kinesiology and Integrative Physiology. She has a PhD in Epidemiology from the State University of New York at Buffalo, MHS in Microbiology, the Johns Hopkins Center, School of Hygiene and Public Health. Yes, the Johns Hopkins Center rears its head again. BS in Microbiology, Washington State University. So that's her background. And she was asked the question, how long do you think it will be until there's a vaccine? She said the shortest time to get a vaccine has been 4 years. The average is 10 to 15 years. Then says the fact that we think we might have a vaccine in just a year is scientifically pretty amazing. And then stated this, scientists mapped the entire genome of the virus within a month from when it was identified, and said it's amazing to look at how much we do know about this virus in such a short period of time. Indeed, Ms. Kamm, it is amazing and extraordinary, as all other vaccines take over a decade, but she stated they mapped the entire genome of the virus within a month. So how does she explain this piece then? While preparing the court papers for a private criminal prosecution of UK MPs for pandemic fraud, we have discovered that the Office of the Secretary of State for Mandatory Vaccinations has now admitted in a Freedom of Information request that, quote, they have no records which show that the cause of the COVID-19 virus has ever been proven to exist. No records which show that the cause of the COVID-19 virus has ever been proven to exist. That's official UK documents. And we'll have more evidence on that shortly within this next segment. Is the vaccine done by Moderna? Or is the vaccine mode RNA? It's all in the words once you see. So what is RNA? Ribonucleic acid, RNA, is a polymeric molecule essential in various biological roles in coding, decoding, regulation and expression of genes. Take note of the words coding and decoding, as it will become clear why later. RNA and DNA are nucleic acids along with lipids, proteins and carbohydrates. Nucleic acids constitute one of the 4 major macromolecules essential for all known forms of life. Like DNA, RNA is assembled as a chain of nucleotides, but unlike DNA, RNA is found in nature as a single strand folded onto itself rather than a paired double strand. Cellular organisms use messenger RNA, mRNA, to convey genetic information using the nitrogenous bases of guanine, uracil, adenine and cytosine, denoted by the letters G, U, A and C, that directs synthesis of specific proteins. and many viruses encode their genetic information using an RNA genome. Many viruses encode their genetic information using an RNA genome. So having established that RNA is a messenger of code, which is likely why humans can be computer-like in nature, the RNA delivers the code and changes the expression of the genes. But like all coding, it depends on who encodes the code and the information contained within it. The RNA is the deliverer of genetic information and so has the potential to alter our genetic coding. Some RNA molecules play an active role within cells by catalyzing biological reactions, controlling gene expression, or sensing and communicating responses to cellular signals. Cellular being the operative word. And one of these active processes is protein synthesis, a universal function in which RNA molecules direct the synthesis of proteins on ribosomes. This process uses transfer RNA molecules to deliver amino acids to the ribosome, where ribosomal RNA then links amino acids together to form coded proteins. Coding, decoding, messenger, communicating responses. All very computer-like that, is it not? The first two vaccines to show any results, made by Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna, or ModRNA, both use an experimental, that's what they say, an experimental approach called mRNA, messenger RNA, which involves injecting part of the virus's genetic code into the body to train the immune system. Antibodies and T cells are then made by the body to fight the coronavirus, is the theory. And yet, urine therapy works in exactly the same way. Yet, curiously, it's not used by organised medical practices. And the theory behind that is that urine has filtered through our system and contains genetic coding of all the waste contained within the sample. Now, upon testing the sample, the genetic codes are revealed, and so then a treatment for excessive, rogue or wrong cells is then formulated. But both the normal vaccines and the urine sample contain live virus material. And when taken or absorbed, the body then reacts to the coded information it receives and counteracts the virus or rogue antibodies contained within our bodies. And it all sounds very well until you come to the latest vaccines. And here is the details of each vaccine. Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine. Type: RNA. Virus genetic code. Doses: 2, 3 weeks apart. Effective: 90%. Storage: -75 centigrade. Moderna. Type: RNA. Virus genetic code. Doses: 2, 4 weeks apart. Effective: 95%. storage -20 centigrade for up to 6 months. And what this reveals to us all is these vaccines are not the traditional vaccines that administers live virus. This has no live virus present and only the genetic code of the virus. This brings up two things. Why is there no live virus available to install into the vaccines? 2, do they not have any live virus available to use as a traditional vaccine? Remember, they said it was experimental. And 3, if there's no available live virus, where did the genetic code come from? So who are BioNTech? They are a German company who in August 2018 announced that it entered into a multi-year research and development collaboration with the US company Pfizer Inc. to develop mRNA-based vaccines for prevention of influenza. Not COVID. And under the terms of the agreement, following BioNTech's completion of a phase 1 clinical trial, Pfizer would assume sole responsibility for further clinical development and commercialization of mRNA-based flu vaccines. In September of 2019, it signed an agreement with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to develop HIV and TB programs, to identify and develop preclinical vaccine and immunotherapy candidates for the prevention of HIV and tuberculosis infections, and for the long-term antiretroviral therapy free remission of HIV diseases. The company is working to develop the BNT162b2 vaccine against the SARS-CoV-2 with Pfizer and Fosun, F-O-S-U-N. Fosun are linked with the Carlyle Group, and they are an asset management group in the main. In June of 2020, BioNTech received €250 million from Temasek Holdings Singapore, which is the same company who has on the board there was housed by the Swedish clown known as Marcus Wallenberg. And then we come to this section and document from the Medical Health Products Regulatory Agency in the UK. United Kingdom, Software Packages and Information Systems. 2020 S207/506291. Name and official name, MHRA Buyer Organisation, Town, London, NUTS code, NUTS being the operative word, United Kingdom. Type of contracting authority, ministry or any other national or federal authority, including their regional or local subdivisions. But since when did the UK become under federal authority? Federal of what? Main activity, health, scope of the procurement. The title, Safety Connect AI. artificial intelligence. Main CPV code 48 million software package and information systems. Short description: the MHRA urgently seeks an artificial intelligence software tool to process the expected high volume of COVID-19 vaccine adverse drug reactions, and to ensure that no details from the ADR's adverse drug reactions text are missed. An AI software tool to process the expected high volume of COVID-19 vaccine adverse drug reactions. Total value of the procurement excluding VAT, £1.5 million British pounds. The procurement is related to a project and/or programme financed by the European Union funds. No. Type of procedure: award of a contract without prior publication of a call for competition in the official journal of the European Union in the cases listed below. And the procurement falls outside of the scope of the application of the directive. And the explanation given: for reasons of extreme urgency under Regulation 32, paragraph 2, line C, related to the release of a COVID-19 vaccine, MHRA have accelerated the sourcing and implementation of a vaccine-specific AI tool. They said it was strictly necessary as it's not possible to retrofit the MHRA's legacy systems to handle the volume of ADRs, adverse drug reactions, that will be generated by a COVID-19 vaccine. That will be generated. And they said, therefore, if the MHRA does not implement the AI tool, it will be unable to process these ADRs effectively. This will hinder its ability to rapidly identify any potential safety issues with the COVID-19 vaccine and represents a direct threat to patient life and also public health. Reasons for extreme urgency. The MHRA recognised that its planned procurement process for the Safety Connect programme using the AI tool would not have concluded by the vaccine launch, leading to an inability to effectively monitor adverse reactions to the vaccine. Events unforeseeable. The COVID-19 crisis is novel, and developments in the search of a COVID-19 vaccine have not followed any predictable pattern so far. Oops. Date of conclusion of the contract, the 14th of September 2020. Information about tenders, number of tenders received, 1. The contract has been awarded to a group of economic operators. No. Name and address of the contractor, the official name, Genpact, GENPACT UK Limited. Genpact offers these services: artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, business technology services, customer experience, digital transformation, consulting industrial, Internet of Things, intelligent automation and robotic process automation. Is the contractor an SME? No, small and mid-sized enterprises, that means. An SME is commonly used by the EU, the United Nations, and also the World Trade Organization. The review body is Medicines and Healthcare Products Agency, and the date of dispatch of this notice was the 19th of October 2020. And there you have it. They are expecting mass overload of the system due to adverse drug reactions to a vaccine they don't know yet exists. For a virus, the UK government has no live virus available, which suggests it doesn't exist, and the health authority wants to use £1.5 million British pounds of the public's money to counteract an inability to deal with bad drug reactions. Well, that fills you with great confidence, doesn't it? Not. And this is completely absurd on all levels. Right, let's go a little deeper, shall we? Then we come to the epicenter of math deficiency, devoid of common sense, and the let's all make a load of bucks at the expense of our country's citizens, the US of A. Operation Warp Speed is a public-private partnership initiated by the US government to facilitate and accelerate the development, manufacturing and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, therapeutics and diagnostics. Operation Warp Speed was introduced in early April 2020 after a round-table meeting with industry executives at the White House on March the 2nd. It will promote mass production of multiple vaccines based on preliminary evidence, allowing for faster distribution if clinical trials confirm one of the vaccines is safe and effective. We've already found out it's not. The plan anticipates that some of these vaccines will not prove safe or effective, making the program more costly than typical vaccine development, but potentially leading to the availability of a viable vaccine several months earlier than typical timelines. Try nearly a decade, not months. 10 to 15 years for the normal vaccine, not months. The plan anticipates that some of these vaccines will not prove safe or effective. So it's not just the UK who anticipate this or these vaccines will not be safe then. And we're supposed to trust these people? On March 27th, the United States Congress of Baboons allocated nearly $10 billion for Operation Warp Speed through the CARES Act, Coronavirus Aid, Relief and Economic Security, with $6.5 billion designated by Congress for countermeasure development through BARDA, B-A-R-D-A, along with $3 billion for NIH research. And it was stated that Operation Warp Speed is an interagency program that includes components of the Department of Health and Human Services, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Food and Drug Administration, the National Institutes of Health, NIH, and the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, which is BARDA, the Department of Defense, private firms, and other federal agencies, including the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. Really. The CDC are a vaccine manufacturer, not a governmental body. The FDA, Food and Drug, is also not a governmental body either. The term federal agency tells you that. They operate outside of government, or actually run it in most cases. Now, the legislative definitions of the term federal agency are varied and even contradictory. And in fact, the official United States government manual offers no definition for the term federal. Yet it's ran by NIH, National Institutes of Health. Started out as a US Navy hospital group, and they became federal, which is not a government term, and is a separate body altogether from the government in 1944 under the Federal Public Health Act. Do they have precedence in giving patients injections without consent? Yes, in the 1960s. Virologist and cancer researcher Chester M. Southam injected HeLa cancer cells into patients at the Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital without their consent. And when 3 doctors resigned after refusing to inject patients without their consent, the experiment gained considerable media attention at the time. By the 1990s, the NIH committee focus had shifted to DNA research and launched the Human Genome Project. Dr. Fauci and Deborah Birx both worked for NIH. In fact, she worked in the same lab as him in 1983 through 1986. And her husband was Bill Clinton's advance man, organising all trips made by the Clintons. And he currently serves on the board of directors for the US Committee to Expand NATO. Oops. Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, or BARDA for short, manages a 2004 operation called Project BioShield, which provides a mechanism to fund the research, development and stockpiling of vaccines and treatment that the government could use. During public health emergencies such as chemical, biological, radiological or nuclear attacks. The point that is called the term project should always bring concern. You all should know by now which organisation runs all the projects. The CIA. As for the rest involved in this Operation Warp Speed, the DoD runs DARPA. And here is just some of the activities of DARPA. Insect Allies Program, 2017 to 2021. Insect Allies. In a 2016 tender for contracts to develop genetically modified plant viruses for an approach involving their dispersion into the environment using insects. Plant viruses hold significant promise as carriers of gene editing circuitry. And are a natural partner for an insect-transmitted delivery platform. Didn't he just release a load of mosquitoes in Florida? Maybe that's why the cases went up there. And in 2014, DARPA did this. Brain implants, often referred to as neural implants, are technological devices that connect directly to a biological subject's brain. Some brain implants involve creating interfaces between neural systems and computer chips. Oh dear, those bio machines don't sound so healthy now. But this next paragraph should raise alarms with certain people. This work is part of a wider research field called brain-computer interfaces, which is brain-computer interface research, which also includes technology such as EEG arrays that allow interface between mind and machine, but do not require the direct implantation of a device. Frequencies. And when you throw in the fact that DARPA are responsible for HAARP, robotic insects and animals for warfare, and rogue human influence in satellites they're also involved in, and you see a bigger picture. Now, it was President Trump who officially announced the public-private partnership on May 15th, 2020. Operation Warp Speed will coordinate existing health and human services efforts, including the NIH Active Partnership for Vaccine and Therapeutic Development and the NIH RADx Initiative for Diagnostic Development and work by BARDA. The Food and Drug Administration announced on the 30th of June 2020 that the vaccine will need to be at least 50% effective to gain approval, in at least diminishing the severity of the COVID-19 symptoms. Only 50% effective to gain a pass from the FDA. Oh my. But then this was the same agency, along with influence from Donald Rumsfeld, who said aspartame was safe as a substitute sweetener. The company who developed that aspartame was G.D. Searle, who Rumsfeld was CEO and then president of the same company. But guess who owns the trademark for G.D. Searle? Pfizer. G.D. Searle eventually merged into another company of genetic modifying called Monsanto. So if you needed confirmation your so-called government would not approve an unsafe vaccine, Rumsfeld and Ronald Reagan were both involved in getting a cancer-causing aspartame approved. Now, months before the COVID-19 pandemic, the White House Council of Economic Advisers prepared a report at the request of the National Security Council's Biodefense Team. And the report emphasized how federal policy needed to encourage private and public partnerships to enable faster approval and production of vaccines during a pandemic. This was before it even started. They set up this team. And the fact that this biodefense team was assembled before the pandemic suggests further advanced knowledge of this event unfolding. Remember our show outing the Pentagon earlier in the year of having mass quantities of PPEs with $1.25 masks they were going to sell to Americans for $7. The Pentagon had acquired those in or before December 2019. Like I've said all along, this was a deliberate act and our politicians were aware of it, including Trump. Now, after Rick Bright, the BARDA director, was reassigned on about April the 22nd following his resistance of efforts to fund potentially dangerous drugs promoted by those with political connections, Moncef Slaoui was named in May by the Trump administration as the Operation Warp Speed Chief Advisor. So who is Mr. Slaoui? He is a vaccine researcher and formerly chairman of Global Research and Development and chairman of Global Vaccines at GlaxoSmithKline, where he led the development of 5 major novel vaccines. Slaoui is also a major stockholder in the 6 leading biopharma corporations. His wife works for the Johns Hopkins Center. All in-house, you see. House being the operative word. House of. Then we come to General Gustav F. Perner, who served as Commanding General of the Army Materiel Command, was named Operation Warp Speed Chief Operating Officer. And he looks very born too, to me, but not confirmed. The project has other scientists, physicians and military officers involved in management of the key focus areas of development, manufacturing and distribution. The project had a budget of $10 billion with additional funds allocated through BARDA. And then we come to this. Who is the Operation Warp Speed manager? White House Senior Advisor Jared Kushner. With the support of the United States Department of Defense and the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Now, Kushner has tentative links with the group I mentioned earlier known as Fosun, and his deal with a Chinese group for masks was almost certainly done with that group. Remember, we outed Kushner, FEMA and Gavin Newsom, who is a relation to Pelosi, of having done deals for PPEs with China and India whilst threatening and banning the American companies, including 3M, from selling PPEs to Americans. Those PPEs that came from China all had microchips in. So we mentioned DARPA's involvement via the DoD in this and their role in the Human Genome Project. Is it possible this project all plays into what is occurring now? The Human Genome Project was an international scientific research project with the goal of determining the base pairs that make up human DNA and of identifying and mapping all of the genes of the human genome from both a physical and functional standpoint. And it remains the world's largest collaborative biological project. Now, planning started after the idea was picked up in 1984 by the US government. The project formally launched in 1990 and was declared complete on April the 14th, 2003. It was picked up in 1984. All a bit Orwellian, that is it not? But when you consider that the website group known as Ancestry.com was also launched in the same time period of 1986, deeper questions emerge. Now, the funding from the US government through the NIH again, as well as numerous other groups from around the world. And a parallel project was conducted outside the government by Celera Corporation or Celera Genomics, which was formally launched in 1998. Most of the government-sponsored sequencing was performed in 20 universities and research centres in the United States, the United Kingdom, Japan, France, Germany, Spain, and China. Now, the Human Genome Project originally aimed to map the nucleotides, which we mentioned earlier, contained in a human haploid reference genome of more than 3 billion. The genome of any given individual is unique. Mapping the human genome involved sequencing a small number of individuals and then assembling these together to get a complete sequence for each chromosome. Therefore, the finished human genome is a mosaic and not representing any one individual. Yet their test results combined people into colour-coded regions, which is group genome, not individual. Now, the Human Genome Project was a 13-year-long publicly funded project initiated in 1990 with the objective of determining the DNA sequence of the entire eukaryotic human genome within 15 years. But what they found was the project was not able to sequence all the DNA found in human cells. It sequenced only eukaryotic regions of the genome, which make up 92.1% of the human genome, and was declared completed in April 2003. Now, when you consider that Project BioShield, which we just referenced earlier, was launched less than a year later, which provides a mechanism to fund the research, development and stockpiling of vaccines and treatments that the government could use during public health emergencies such as chemical, biological, radiological or nuclear attacks, remember. perhaps now we see a larger picture emerging that has numerous branches and also implications. Message to the vaccine people. Right, let's go deeper again. And legally mandated vaccination or forced vaccination has long understood to be a grievous infringement of freedom, but has been carried out in some countries, including the US. Now, in recent years, this practice has been carried out generally only in more indirect forms, i.e. to keep a job or send your child to this school or that school. Green card applications, citizen applications also, all required you to submit to vaccination. And regardless of what one might think of regular vaccines and to which degree they should be mandatory, the campaign to introduce a mandatory vaccine against COVID-19 has been of an entire different scale and also intensity, where a de facto or legally binding comprehensive vaccine of the entire world population of almost 8 billion seems to be on the cards. But there are some international legal principles that apply here and have largely been overlooked, as fact checkers never check facts, only to skew the truth in favour of the psychotic plans of largely a few despots of the unenlightened variety. The Nuremberg Code is a set of ethical principles introduced as part of the verdict in the medical trials of the Nuremberg Tribunal after World War II, and the code, created after the horrors of the Nazi Zionist medical experiments, states as its first principle that voluntary consent is essential. The first principle is voluntary consent is essential. And this principle was continued and expanded in the UNESCO Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, adopted by acclamation at the UNESCO General Conference on October the 19th, 2005, where it states in Article 3.2 that the interests and welfare of the individual should have priority over the sole interest of science or society. The interests and welfare of the individual should have priority over the sole interest of science or society. And in Article 6.1, any preventative, diagnostic and therapeutic medical intervention is only to be carried out with the prior, free and informed consent of the person concerned based on adequate information. The consent should, where appropriate, be expressed and may be withdrawn by the person concerned at any time and for any reason without disadvantage or prejudice. For this is the very reason is why they are currently stifling all knowledge that is beneficial to we the people, with their army of false news and checkers reaching a scale this year of epic proportions. Those two articles tells you they can't mandatory vaccinate. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution prevents the government from making laws which regulate an establishment of religion or that would prohibit the free exercise of religion or abridge the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the freedom of assembly, or the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. And this was adopted on the 15th of December 1791 as one of the 10 amendments that constitute the Bill of Rights. And it said, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government. But then we find this little gem of information stating, although the First Amendment applies only to state actors, there is a common misconception that it prohibits anyone from limiting free speech, including private, non-governmental entities. In United States law, a state actor is a person who is acting on behalf of a governmental body and is therefore subject to regulation under the United States Bill of Rights, including the First, Fifth, and 14th Amendments, which prohibit the federal and state governments from violating certain rights and freedoms. Now, a state actor is someone connected to the government, an actor. And now you know why myself and many other thinking people say politics is pure theatre. They are actors. Politics is the last refuge for every cheat, liar, and service-to-self cretins that was ever born. And yet so many people follow it, participate with it, and even vote for it. It has never solved, fixed, or cared for we the people in any way, shape, or form. And we are the problem. We have 75 million Milgram experiment host people believing a 77-year-old half-senile old man will fix them and their country. You just cannot get more delusional than that. The same applies to the 70 million people who voted for Trump to fix the economy and the country. This was a man who went bankrupt 6 times, remember? $145 million voted combined votes for 2 74-plus-year-olds who are stage actors to keep you all distracted whilst the real power hides behind the scenes. And voting for stage actors in a fake government is pure folly on our part. And for those new, America has not had an official government since 1871. Yes, you heard that right. 1871. It is a corporation acting as a government called USA Inc. The term United States is nothing to do with America either, just like the original United States, which was based in Europe and arranged in 1815 in Vienna, called the United States of Europe. Both of them are family and banker-based corporations, private groups of elites running and raping whole countries. And this is why there are so many of what are called private government contractors, working largely within intelligence circles, which is an oxymoron, and seemingly operating outside of the law under the act known as national security. National security and the clearance security levels allows them to avoid investigation or prosecution based on the fact that no government official has the high enough security clearance to view the incriminating evidence and documents. The question remains is, how are fact-checkers, Twitter, Facebook, GoOgle, YouTube all getting around the First Amendment right of free speech? Question 2 is, how and why has Trump allowed this to go unhindered? Question 3 is, why have there been several congressional committees speaking to Mark Zuckerberg with a silent F and other social media outlets that have not addressed the First Amendment issue? And 4, where is the Supreme Court actions in relation to this matter? Is there or was there a previous attempt at forced vaccinations? The answer is yes. Did you know in 1901 Americans were forced at gunpoint to have the smallpox vaccine? So we do have precedent here for that type of action. Let us not forget what happened to the syphilis experimentations on black people in Tuskegee between 1932 and 1972 and the damage that caused. We are right to question their ethics and motives, as they've never been seen to be upfront and honest with we the people. And remember, the US tested an unknown number of vaccines on its armed forces, resulting in Gulf War syndrome. And yet Trump tells us the military is going to administer the vaccines. Go and play golf in Scotland, you utter clown. The very fact the US Supreme Court said in a case in 2010, Brewswich versus Wyeth LLC, that, quote, vaccines were determined to be unavoidably unsafe, unquote, tells you all you need to know. The system knows they are unsafe. Otherwise, they wouldn't put in place indemnity from prosecution. And that act alone tells any sane person they are not sure of what they're giving us. The 2 vaccines by Pfizer and BioNTech plus Moderna, the latter of which is a play on words of mode RNA. As what they're stating, they are not vaccines per se. A vaccine is a live sample of the virus, and when injected, it then stimulates the immune system to recognize it as a virus, and then the body attacks the rogue cells. But these 2 are not offering live virus injections. They are offering the virus's genetic code only. All those tests and samples, and they haven't been able to create a small sample of live COVID to then create the vaccine. Is that believable? So they're not using live virus, only genetic coding. That doesn't state which RNA coding it is injecting. In fact, there's no mention of the COVID virus in and of the vaccine, except to relay to you it is a COVID vaccine. Big difference. And this is unlike any other vaccines where they say a flu jab, polio or MMR jab. It only states RNA virus genetic code. A mass vaccine for all has other issues that some seem to overlook on all levels as well. The question of why is the vaccine the same for everyone, when clearly our genetics and DNA says we're all very different. And it raises the questions of, have they really looked into the factor of which type of human am I? Which planet did we originate from? How can we be all the same when evidence clearly points differently? And is this an attempt at culling certain genetic lines? Most people think all of this is new, yet history points otherwise. So let's go back in time a bit to see if this alarm and mandatory vaccinations has appeared before. In 1813, the US government enacted an act to encourage vaccination, establishing a national vaccine agency. In 1853, the United Kingdom made smallpox vaccination mandatory. In 1874, the German Empire followed suit, a population of 54 million, then Sweden. Anti-vaccine people first appeared in the early 1880s. Not 1980, 1880. The first batch claimed that the transmission of the virus was false. Religious people then claimed that the vaccinations were unnatural and also an affront to their deity. Sound familiar? It should do. His story always repeats unless we stop it. Do state governments have the authority to compel such refusers to get vaccinated on the threat of punishment? In Jacobson versus Massachusetts, 1905, the US Supreme Court confronted a state law that allowed local governments to require smallpox vaccinations when the local health authorities deemed them necessary. A Cambridge resident, Henning Jacobson, balked at his city's vaccination requirement and was fined $5 back in 1905. Now, he contested that penalty and took his case all the way up to the highest court in the land. What was Jacobson's legal argument? Well, in the words of the court, Jacobson insists that his liberty is invaded when the state subjects him to fine or imprisonment for neglecting or refusing to submit to vaccination, that a compulsory vaccination law is unreasonable, arbitrary, and oppressive, and therefore hostile to the inherent right of every free man to care for his own body and health in such a way as to him seems best. The Supreme Court rejected the argument. Now, that came about after Boston, which was a hotbed of anti-vaccine people, underwent compulsory door-to-door vaccination after the state initially blamed the homeless for the disease. No one asks, why didn't the state do anything to prevent people being homeless in the first place? I know, common sense question again. Quarantine camps, are they new ideas? Jade Helm. Think again. Boston, 1901 through 1903. All patients with smallpox, except those who were extremely ill, were taken to special facilities. A detention hospital on Southampton Street served as the main hospital. When additional beds were needed, the quarantine facilities on Gallops Island in Boston Harbour were hastily expanded. But it wasn't just Boston, though, that implemented it. A certain place situated just down the coast just had to get in on the act as well. Yes, New York. How New York separated immigrant families in the smallpox outbreak of 1901. Vaccinations were administered by police raids, parents and children were torn apart, and the New York City Health Department controlled the narrative. Late on a Friday in February 1901, when the residents of an Italian neighborhood in New York City's East Harlem were at home and sleeping, a battalion of more than 200 police officers and doctors quietly occupied the roofs, backyards, and front doors of every building for blocks. Under the command of the Bureau of Contagious Diseases, they entered the homes one by one, woke every tenant up, scraped a patch of their skin raw with a lancet, and rubbed the wound with a small dose of the virus variola. It was a smallpox raid, and the residents in good health were being vaccinated. But for anyone who showed any symptoms of smallpox, the events of that night were even more alarming. They were taken immediately to the docks on the East River and sent by boat under the cover of night to an island just south of the Bronx called North Brother. Now today, North Brother Island is an overgrown and uninhabited bird sanctuary, but from 1880s to the 1940s, it was a thriving complex of quarantine hospitals for typhoid, smallpox, TB, diphtheria, and other contagious illnesses. As of 1901, as the Atlanta Constitution reported, the mere mention of the place to a New Yorker was like conjuring up a bugaboo. Now, both North Brother Island and South Brother Island were claimed by the Dutch West India Company in 1614. Funny how it all connects, doesn't it? And were originally named Die Gezellen, translated as the Companions in English. Probably companion with the British East India Company. Now, the islands were both originally part of Queens County, and on June the 8th, 1881, North Brother Island was transferred to what was then part of New York County, later to become the Bronx. On April 16, 1964, South Brother Island was also transferred to the Bronx, and the islands had been incorporated into Long Island City in 1870 before the consolidation of New York City in 1898. Long Island, of course, is associated with other types of heinous experimentation on humans. The infamous Montauk Project was ran from there also. Is it connected, the two stories? You decide. The subject of the CIA. We revealed this nugget of information on September 24th show that could well be linked from the previous piece. The CIA launched its own federal lab and research and development branch on Monday. CIA Labs makes the agency a possible research partner for the more than 300 other federal labs and academic experts. The lab will also allow CIA officers to get patents and licenses for any intellectual property they create while working at the agency. The agents would then be able to take a portion of the profits, while the CIA will take the rest of the money, according to MIT Technology Review. Officers could make 15% of the total income, with a maximum of $150,000 per year. Now, the research areas that the CIA labs cover will include artificial intelligence, bioscience, virtual and augmented reality, quantum computing, and advanced materials and manufacturing, amongst others, according to the release in September. CIA Labs conducts multidisciplinary research, development, testing, and engineering to address new challenges, adapt, improve, or accelerate the production of existing solutions, and solve persistent scientific and technological problems in new ways. And the CIA requested that other federal labs and academic leaders send in their ideas to work together via an online form. Now, Dawn Meyerix, who's the head of CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology, said in a statement that CIA Labs will help us maintain our competitive edge and protect our nation. For those new, the original term for nation did not mean country, but race. With the CIA being directly involved in the ET narrative with the Majestic 12 and being formed just months after the Roswell and Aztec crashes, one has to ask the question, which race are the CIA? The very fact that the CIA have done absolutely zero to protect, using the current term for nation, our country, one has to ask another question. Are those running the CIA another race of beings? And deeper we go again. We were warned in May of what was to come when this snippet leaked out via our show, where cyber experts slammed Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for his proposal to microchip children who return to schools and kindergartens after the coronavirus lockdown is lifted. That was May the 14th. Have you not connected the dots yet? Perhaps this piece will help. Bill Gates, or Bill Gates, correct term, and MIT are currently developing, which means they already have, the Human Implantable Quantum Dot Vaccination Delivery System, which is described as a tattoo for the hand, which will include our identification mark and vaccine records. It needs an enzyme called luciferase in order to make it work. What a nice name they chose for that enzyme. You think that is a coincidence? It's not. Neuropeptide technology cell lysis, Lysis. Lysis, dissolution of cells bacteria. 1902, from lysis, or the Latin lysis, from the Greek lysis, a loosening, or from lying bastards more like it, to unfasten, loose, loosen, or untie. From the Pi root lu, to loosen, divide, or cut apart. And earlier in the sense, gradual recession of a disease. Lysis, L-ISIS. L-ISIS. But perhaps it's not lysis or L-ISIS at all. But if you add bio to it, it perhaps makes more sense of what they're actually doing. Bio means life. Lysis means to loosen or unfasten. And when the two are added together, you get the word biolysis. Biolysis first formed in 1865 and means the destruction of life. Later, more specifically, dissolution of a living organism, resolution of a dead organism into a constituent matter. Luciferase, cat, oh my word, they always prop up those fairy snakes. And alkaline phosphatase reporter activity accumulates primarily in the cytoplasm of transfected cells. The transfected cells are harvested by washing the adherent cells in the plate with the phosphate buffered saline 3 times. The cells are then lysed by the addition of 1 milligram per 100 milligrams plate of Triton lysis buffer. Now, the presence of the reducing agent, DTT, is critical to maintain luciferase enzymatic activity. The lysed cells are scraped with what is known as a rubber policeman, which is a plastic or rubber scraper, transferred to Eppendorf tubes and vortexed, and the insoluble material is pelleted in a microcentrifuge for 5 minutes at 4 centigrade. Now, after the transfer of new Eppendorf tubes, 100 UL of each supernatant, the cytoplasmic fraction, is assayed for luciferase reporter activity, and the 50 UL is used for assay of alkaline phosphatase reporter activity. Now, the UL is cubic micrometer to litre conversion. The Firefly luciferase reporter assay provides rapid results of cellular transfections. Approximately 112 to 113 hours should be sufficient for the experienced user to produce triplicate results of luciferase and the internal control alkaline phosphatase assays. So what does this involve? Circadian rhythms introduction. It'll all make more sense. It's a bit technical, but it'll all make sense. Luciferases are naturally occurring protein enzymes that catalyze emission of light from a substrate, which is luminescence. Many structurally heterogeneous forms of luciferase exist in a wide range of species. The best known is the firefly, which catalyzes the emission of green photons from its natural substrate, the firefly luciferin, in the presence of oxygen and ATP. Now, many luciferases have relatively short half-lives of just a few hours or even less than an hour in some cases, making them good reporters of changes in transcriptional rate on a circadian timescale. And genes for the firefly luciferase and a few others have been cloned and are available commercially. Luciferase luminescence is extremely dim, often too dim to be seen by the unaided eye in experimental applications. Various much brighter fluorescent reporters are available, and two of these have been used successfully to monitor circadian rhythms. Green fluorescent protein and the aptly named chameleon, a center of cytoplasmic. Luciferase, however, enjoys two principal advantages over the fluorescent reporters. First, luciferase does not require exogenous illumination. The light detected is emitted from the biological sample itself. I hope you see where this is going. Fluorescent reporters, on the other hand, require bombardment with toxic, relatively high-energy photons so that the reporter can be excited and then re-emit lower energy photons. Over long-term circadian experiments, phototoxicity is a serious concern with fluorescent reporters, but a non-issue with the luciferase. Second, background emission of light by biological samples or by luciferase substrate alone is generally extremely low, whereas autofluorescent background levels can be as high as the fluorescence signal of the reporter itself. The green fluorescent protein, for example, spectrally overlaps that of riboflavin, which is vitamin B2, an essential enzyme cofactor found in biological tissues and culture media. So it overlaps riboflavin. What is that purpose? Well, it is required by the body for cellular respiration. Now, respiration refers to a person's breathing and the movement of air into and out of the lungs. The respiratory system provides oxygen to body tissues for cellular respiration removes the waste product carbon dioxide and helps maintain acid-base balance. So it overlaps your respiratory system. A bit like masks then, isn't it? Are you connecting more dots now? Thus, despite its modest photic output, luciferase is well suited as an optical reporter for circadian function. These transgenic organisms exhibit robust, although quite dim, circadian rhythms of bioluminescence, useful for a wide range of genetic and biochemical studies of circadian clock mechanisms. Expression of the luciferase gene fusion product confers on the host the ability to glow in the dark. Why would they want that? The reporter visualizes transcriptional and translational expression of the attached foreign gene and enables one to localize it to particular domains, cells, or organelles of almost any organism. This can be done non-invasively with inexpensive, non-isotopic, easily available substrates and at extremely high sensitivity under no significant endogenous background. So these microchips are being made with bioluminescence to be able to be scanned externally and does not reveal itself to the host. Let's remind you of the name again. A human implantable quantum dot vaccination delivery system. The luciferase assay is used to determine if a protein can activate or repress the expression of a target gene. Unlike CHIP or EMSA assays, which only assess the ability of a protein to interact with a region of DNA, a luciferase assay is able to establish a functional connection between the presence of the protein and the amount of gene product that is produced. And this assay is unable to determine whether the protein directly interacts with the DNA itself. The protein could indirectly affect transcription by activating or repressing a separate protein or protein complex that affects transcription. So this microchip can not only target our genes, but our proteins, our DNA, and also RNA. Mode RNA now makes more sense, does it not? Elon Musk has given 2 clues for those who can see and connect the dots. And we read this out in an earlier show, and it fits in with now. And he mentioned Deus X, DEUS-X. And at the time, I decided to look into it as a potential clue. And I'm sure you will all at THI be familiar with the narrative, most of which was warned of in this show. Deus X is a series of role-playing video games, simulations. And the series, set during the 21st century, focuses on the conflict between secretive factions who wish to control the world by proxy and the effects of transhumanistic attitudes and technologies in a dystopian future setting. Remember, recently we discussed of how they always say dystopian to make out that it's a future event when it's the past or now. Now, Deus Ex 2000 was the first. Deus Ex Invisible War 2003. Deus Ex Human Revolution 2011. Deus Ex The Fall 2013. Deus Ex Go 2016. And Deus Ex Mankind Divided, also 2016. Throw in the 4-year loop on top of that and you come to 2020. Now, while each game has a distinct story, they are all set within the same world, an Earth of the future, which has evolved a dystopian cyberpunk society, cyber being the operative word. And in this setting, several organizations compete, read factions, for overall control of the world. Several of the societies mentioned or shown are inspired by real-world and invented secret societies and conspiracy theories. Though the one constant throughout the series is the Illuminati, although FEMA, Majestic 12 and the Knights Templar also feature in these simulation video games. The main characters in the series possess artificially acquired superhuman abilities referred to as augmentation. And Deus Ex takes place during 2052, where it says the world is facing a crisis caused by a mysterious nanovirus called the Grey Death. Nanovirus. The fact that the two vaccines are stored at such record low temperatures, particularly the Pfizer, the Pfizer one, and mode RNA, has been suggested. The reason for doing that is they both contain nanoparticles, as no other vaccine or drugs is stored at such low temperatures. Now, in the game, in the midst of the crisis, J.C. Denton, a nano-augmented rookie agent for the United Nations Anti-Terrorist Coalition, is sent to eliminate terrorist cells, but ends up drawn into the various schemes of rival factions and secret societies who are responsible for the epidemic. Rival factions and secret societies who are responsible for the epidemic. Oh my. And then they throw in the ET side of it. Once he arrives in Area 51, Denton has the choice between neutralizing technology and plunging the world into a second dark age, allying with the Illuminati, or merging with an advanced AI so as to impose a benevolent dictatorship. That last sentence is deliberately misleading. The idea that neutralizing technology will plunge us into a dark age is pure fear porn. It is the AI that will plunge us out of our current mode of existence. I will go into that more later. It then says an invisible war takes place 20 years later. Well, we're already in it. After a massive economic depression, we're already in now, and a period of war called the collapse, we're already in that as well. That was indicated by Denton's actions and a combination of possible events from the first game. Now, the game's protagonist, Alex D., who was a clone of Denton, is drawn into a conflict between two seemingly opposing factions. Seemingly. And learns of conspiratorial factions which seek to drastically change the world, including J.C. Denton. Alex then can perform missions for any of them and eventually becomes able to choose which organisation should rule the world. What is that telling you? That is the Rothschilds and the Black Sun. Both of them are being duped and manipulated at this point, and always have been. They think they're running it. They're not. In the game, Human Revolution is set in 2027, 25 years before the first title, where corporations have extended their influence past the reach of global governments. That's already happened as well. And the development of biomechanical augmentation by a few elite and powerful companies threatens to destabilize society. That is ongoing now. They always say the future when it's now or mainly in the past. Now, the follows Adam Jensen, the security chief for a biotech company called Sarif Industries. And after a devastating attack on Sarif's headquarters, which leaves him near death, Adam is forced to undergo radical augmentation surgery, and he becomes embroiled in both the search for the attackers and the political and ethical repercussions of augmentation technology. Of all the names to pick for a so-called fiction, they choose Adam. There have been many, not all were human, but the next Adam will be vastly different from all previous forms unless we stop it. Now, in the game The Fall is a parallel story set after the spin-off novel called The Icarus Effect. The term refers to the phenomenon of businesses failing abruptly after a period of apparent success, where this failure is brought about by the very elements that led to their initial success. Dystopian? I think not. And the historical script in that game, where bulls take everything to even more extremes and keep raising target prices along the way, ignoring the technical charts that scream caution, as technical disconnects keep stretching to historical extremes. Now, the Icarus flying into the sun with no consequences is the pervasive theme during each bubble. But as a side note, did you know that over 70% of new manufacturing plants in North America, for example, close within the first decade of operations? Around 75% of mergers and acquisitions do not pay off. The acquiring firm's shareholders lose more than the acquired firm shareholders gain. It's called the Icarus paradox. Now, augmented means to make bigger, greater, or more complete. and is indicative of the super soldier and robot programs. But let's look at other aspects of it, shall we, called augmented reality, which we mentioned earlier. Augmented reality, AR, is an interactive experience of a real-world environment where the objects that reside in the real world are enhanced by computer-generated perceptual information, sometimes across multiple sensory modalities. Augmented reality is related to two largely synonymous terms: mixed reality and computer-mediated reality. Now, in the game, it follows the story of Ben Saxon, an augmented former British SAS mercenary who is on the run from his former employers, a group of augmented mercenaries that play a crucial part in the plot of Human Revolution. But it's not revolution, but devolution. The final game, Mankind Divided, is set in 2029, 2 years after the events of the Human Revolution, in a world dealing with the consequences of the previous game's events, regardless of the choice made by Adam at the end of the Human Revolution. The Illuminati have twisted his message, and augmented individuals are persecuted and feared. A disillusioned Adam works with an international task force, hinted to be the precursor to the UNATCO in Deus Ex, designed to stop the rising wave of terrorism brought on by disenfranchised and desperate augmented, while working to uncover the perpetrators of the events that led to the current state of the world. And then we come to this latest hint of reality, augmented or otherwise. Elon Musk again unveiled his latest foray into science fiction on Friday night, a brain chip implant to allow people who are paralyzed to operate technology such as smartphones or robotic limbs with their thoughts. But it has nothing to do with the sympathy play for the paralyzed at all. That is the seducement into the Dark Agenda program. Musk said, "I think it's going to blow your minds." Indeed, literally. And then said this: "It's a bit like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires." I've warned of Fitbits for a reason. They are testing kits worn on the arm to collate data and to see if they can develop for future use in the brain. Oops. But the coin-sized chips developed by Musk's secretive startup Neuralink, they say, are a ways off from being useful to humans. And there they go again with their future terminology. Why? Because he lies. They have it now. Right. Where do we go next? Klaus Schwab, the founder of the globalist World Economic Forum and one of the principal architects of the so-called Great Reset. And he is saying that the world will never again return to normal which is why they've come up with the new bullshit of new normal, as a result of the COVID-19 virus. This despite admitting that the virus is not an existential threat. But Schwab believes that the world's reaction to it, problem, reaction, solution, remember, will create the long-awaited New World Order. And in his COVID-19 book, The Great Reset, Schwab explains many of us are pondering when things will return to normal. The short response is, never. Nothing will ever return to the broken sense of normalcy that prevailed prior to the crisis, he said, because the coronavirus pandemic marks a fundamental inflection point in our global trajectory. And he also said this despite the pandemic not really being the massive crisis that the mainstream media and leftists insist that it is. And he admits, unlike certain past epidemics, COVID-19 does not pose a new existential threat. And despite the virus not being an existential threat, Schwab believes that it can and should be used as the catalyst to create a new world system, which he calls the Great Reset. A new system, he says, where capitalism still exists in a watered-down form. Decentralization and clowns in panic for anyone? But where the real power is wielded by a few global elites with more authoritarian forms of government aiding and abetting them. Schwab also speaks of the coming fourth industrial revolution, where most human jobs will be accomplished by robotics. The COVID-19 crisis has shown us that our old systems are not fit anymore for the 21st century. It has laid bare the fundamental lack of social cohesion, fairness, inclusion, and equality. Schwab said, in short, we need a great reset. Set being the operative word here. And for Schwab, he says a choice exists between going back to the capitalist status quo, which has served most quite well since the end of World War II, and a new system of capitalism light with Marxist, read Zionist, elements thrown in. Specifically, we will need to reconsider our collective commitment to capitalism as we have known it. And he continued, we must rethink what we mean by capital in its many iterations, whether financial, environmental, social, or human. In Schwab's new world, such things as rolling lockdowns, crowd restrictions, and mask mandates will become a permanent part of not only America, but the entire world. This change, Schwab believes, is coming whether we like it or not. We'll see. Radical changes of such consequence are coming that some pundits have referred to as before coronavirus, BC, and after coronavirus, AC. We will make it BC and AC, before clowns and after clowns. And he stated we will continue to be surprised by both the rapidity and unexpected nature of these changes as they conflate with each other. They will provoke second, third, fourth, and more order consequences, cascading effects, and unforeseen outcomes. But when you break it all down, Schwab's pronouncements are little more than a repackaging of the same globalist agenda that we've been hearing about since the 1990s. But this time, however, globalists such as Schwab are using the COVID-19 pandemic as an excuse to foist their collectivist ideas on the world. And it's almost as if the pandemic itself was part of a plan, a triggering point in global behaviour modification exercise. Now, a timely reminder of the timeline that we put out in May that kind of ties a lot of dots together. They'll eventually end phase 1 quarantine once they get enough public pushback. June 2020, that happened. And publicly state that they still think it's too early, change them 2 weeks, to end the isolation, but are going to do it anyways. Once the public go back to normal, wait a few weeks, then continue to overhype the research strain mortality rate, August through September 2020, and combine it with the increase in deaths due to people dying from standard illnesses at a higher rate than normal. That also happened. Due to having highly weakened immune systems from months of being in isolation to help further pad the mortality rate and hype the up-and-coming phase 2 lockdown. Eventually enact phase 2 quarantines, October, November 2020, on an even more extreme level, and then blame the protesters, mostly people who don't trust their government already, for the cause of the larger second wave, stating, "We told you so, it was too early, it's all your own fault because you needed a haircut or your freedoms have consequences." Should this unfold in this manner, the US election could be cancelled, delayed or suspended. Well, that didn't take place, as their Operation Blackout didn't unfold. Enforced the phase 2 quarantines at a much more extreme level, increasing the penalty for defiance, replacing fines with jail time, deem all travel as non-essential, increase checkpoints including military assistance, increase tracking, tracing of the population via mandatory apps. Oh my. Take control of food and gas, large-scale shortages, so that people can only get access to essential products and services if they are first given permission. Mandatory apps. Oh my. A dark force agenda, which is also being run by a group who say they want to be different to the mainstream media. No, you are one and the same. Whether naive or part of a seducement scam, the ending is the same. Keep the phase 2 lockdown in place for a much longer period of time than the phase 1 lockdown, continuing to destroy the global economy, further degrade the supply chain, and further amplify the food shortages and the like. Quell any public outrage using extreme actions, force, and make anyone who defies them appear as public enemy number 1 to those who are willing to submit. After a rather long phase 2 lockdown, 6+ months, roll out the vaccination program and vaccine certification and make it mandatory for everyone, giving priority access to those that submitted from the start, and have those that are for it attack those that are against it, saying they are a threat and the cause of all the problems. with lines like "We can't go back to normal until everyone takes the vaccine." People define them are hurting our way of life and therefore are the enemy. That is the coming civil war. If the majority of people go along with the agenda, then let those people enter the new system, the new normal, while limiting the minority that defy the agenda's ability to work, travel, or live. If the majority of people go against the agenda, then release the weaponized SARS, HIV, MERS, Tribid strain as phase 3, a virus with a 30+% mortality rate as a final scare to push the minority to quickly become the majority, and a final "we told you so" to those that didn't listen. Enact the new economy model, Microsoft Patent 060606. Cryptocurrency system using body activity data. Using body activity data. What do you think the Fitbits are for? Which is based on human behavior and willingness to submit. And this is a tweaked version of the Black Mirror's 15 million merits, whereby they're using food, water, shelter, and other essentials as a weapon of enforcement of the new economic system. To those who think cryptocurrencies are a good thing, think again, jackasses. Basically do what we want and get rewarded, so you will gain credits, score, and gain more access to things you need to survive, or go against what we want and get penalized, lose credits, score, and lose access to things you need to survive. Which was all the same concept in the series Continuum. You will have free will under binding restrictions, and essentially it's comply or die. And then we come to this that came out this week. The UN Biometric Digital Wallet is intended for UN employees initially, and it can be used for data related to human resources, medical status, travel, payroll, and pensions. And I hope you all see where this is going. Every aspect of our lives will be centralized digitally using biometrics and in many cases the blockchain, AI, and 5G. Or even 6. Digital wallets and apps use are giving them what they want, and I will never support it no matter which group offers it. The Life Force group is giving you both, and that is the reason why I criticise them, and it's got zero to do with a tiff laced with wrath on her part I had with Kim. Digital wallets and apps. And that group, whether naive or not, are walking you into their new world. And I, for one, will not shut up until they realise that they are part of the problem. It's a dance with the devil of epic proportions, and if those people using them cannot see it by now, they don't become part of the problem, they are the problem. Period. Now, to those of you not familiar with our show, and for those who still doubt our warnings of this fake pandemic, I'm going to ask you some pertinent questions. 1. Have you ever seen a virus that can tell the time? 2. Have you ever seen a virus that can measure distances? 3. Have you ever seen a virus that has an inbuilt calendar? 4. Have you ever seen a virus that eliminates all other diseases and ailments? This one does, and you believe it? You have something installed within your brain. To make it easier, call it an app and use it for source sakes. This virus is a total conspiracy theory played out on an epic scale, and you people who go along with it are killing tens of thousands of people around the world because you're too stupid to think for yourselves. All too content to let the authorities and jackass newsreaders to tell you what to believe and what not to believe. You think and act like children. In fact, if truth be known, you are of infant level. Is that harsh? No, it's not. You are killing people with your own stupidity, destroying the future lives of your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. All of you have blood on your hands because you cannot think for yourselves or too cowardly to stand up. All too content to go along with the system and rail at people like me and us for being irresponsible, for not wearing a mask, taking a test or a vaccine. Newsflash for you people, masks don't work, the tests are fake, and a vaccine is not a cure for some fake virus, it is a death sentence for humanity. You are the Grim Reapers and harbingers of death. You all go to your churches of control and beg for protection from Satan. But you people are his messengers. You are his foot soldiers, and you people do his work for him by your own weakness and stupidity. Oh, and by the way, Satan, Lucifer, Yahweh, and Jehovah are all an AI-based God. Fact. Is that harsh? You bet it's not. That is the overview look of things on this world. Go ahead and pray for your salvation, which is service to self. It never worked in the past, it doesn't work now, and will not work in the future. Why? Because with authority-compliant people like you, we will not have a future. Period. Final summing up of tonight's show. No fear. We can fight back. Use your own innate abilities. And this show really should be spread far and wide. People were really interested in humanity, they would listen to this show. I don't care whether it takes 3 hours or 4 hours. You may have no hours unless you wake up quickly. And it is a warning to us all, should we fail to heed the warnings given throughout this year and last year, Clowns in Panic, and now. Our very future depends on what we do now. Our actions and our thinking has to go way beyond trust funds, RVs, NESARA, universal basic incomes, ET disclosure, and all the rest that make up our divided and divisive alt-media community. This is a fight for our very existence. How we live or die, free or controlled, abundance of what is real, or Orwellian Hunger Games on steroids. And what we are seeing now is what I warned of with the Clowns in Panic show. A world of technology awaits us that will control every single detail of our life. And I mean every single detail. You will be offered non-winning choices, a bit like the US elections then, by the system in the coming weeks, months and years. Get the vaccine or some other controlling device, or you won't have these privileges. Unless we tell them to stick it where the sun don't shine. Basic human rights are being trampled on, and it will get worse unless the people come together and fight off this systematic attack on us to convert us into something we are not. People, cops, and politicians are the three lowest order of the system. We the people are actually at the top. We've just forgotten. But those three need to come together now and support each other more than ever. Rout out the rogue politicians. A reminder of what I told you would unfold. Police will get replaced by robots. Military will get replaced by robots, drones and machines. Governments will get replaced with hidden committees like the Bilderberg meetings. There will be no banks, no cash, and our money will be replaced by fresh air tokens on your Orwellian wristbands initially, internal bioluminescent chips later, unless we stop it. Obtaining passports, licenses for cars, fishing, or any other licenses, social security and other benefits, food stamps will all be dependent on you being compliant with vaccinations and or microchips. You could be blocked from sporting events, concerts, movie theatres, bars, restaurants, also under the world they have planned for us. In essence, your whole life is ran by them and an artificial intelligence machine. Every minute of your life will be tracked, analysed and adjudicated by a machine implemented by robots, and life as we know it will cease to exist. Freedom and freedoms will go down as a conspiracy theory. For those who wish to see their world as they have planned, check out Continuum. Check out Hunger Games. Check out They Are Better Than Us, to name but a few. Check out the series The 100 also, a psychological study of how humans to react to varying situations and how warring with each other was always the way. That never worked then, and it doesn't work now, and will never work in the future. They have told us in their movies, plays, books and media what they are doing and going to do, and by and large the people have sat there in a Milgram stupor, bowing to authorities like they are the fake gods of old. They are not the authority of your life. You gave them that title. And you can take it away by non-violent non-compliance. So let's overview it, shall we? Altering RNA, which alters DNA. Brain implants, microchipping, no live virus, only genetic code. AI machines to handle adverse reactions, augmented reality, DARPA, Human Genome Project, Human Implantable Quantum Dot Vaccination Delivery Systems, bioluminescence under your skin interacting with your DNA. Do you see what is playing out here? They are genetically modifying all humans in augmented reality and a digitalized world of ultimate control. Smartphones, smart fridges, smart other gadgets, and smart cities for their digital world for those who comply. The rest who don't will not make it. The Great Reset is not a financial system reset. It is a human reset into a digitalized version of humans operating under a rogue AI system that operates outside of our normal reality. AI can only be created by an organic consciousness. Let us not let the inorganic false creations on this planet create our world in their image again, with their Federation Galactic Councils of Death. Our world is run by a small collection of satanic psychopaths who are being ran by off, on and in-world beings with demonic plans for humanity, plans these so-called elitists are oblivious to and are blinded by their seducement programs of fame, wealth and materialistic gain. This has zero to do with politicians, deep state, Bilderbergs, Club of Rome, secret society levels. All of those are small pawns in a game. They have no clue of what it is. None. They have no idea what they are playing, or even if they are playing. Well, actually, you people are not even on the chessboard. You fell for the illusion of your own fake grandeur. The elites have zero clue of what they have got themselves into. Zero. They have all been irreparably genetically modified to be that way and are incapable of change and blinded by fake gods and delusion. But we the people have a choice. And we are allowing it due to one single emotion: fear. Fear is the glue that holds the old system, which, as a reminder, was smashed to smithereens within the past few years, the evidence of which is all around us today. All once hidden, now out in the public for all to see. Largely the public go along as they are under the Milgram mind control, and too few are able to think for themselves, so it's left to us who can to shout the loudest. Public anarchy is the order of the day, and no, that does not include violence, vandalism or destruction of people or property. Civil disobedience to those who wish to do us harm and control us is the order of the day. We have to think and act different. Some think it is a cliche of our show. No, it's a directive. As failure to do so renders us no better than the old system, no better than the clowns who think they run our world, no better than the previous civilizations, all of which I will remind you not only failed, but destroyed themselves to boot. We have to be different. That involves peace, not war. That involves cooperative, not competitive. That requires caring, not ambivalence. That involves sharing, not hoarding. That involves love, not hate. That involves flexibility, not rigidity. Coming together, not dividing us all apart into smaller and smaller labels. All of those latter descriptions have not worked for we the people. It will never work. And what will work is peace, cooperative, caring, sharing, love, flexibility, and coming together for the good of all, not just the few. We are in the war of all wars now. It's not dystopian, the future, it's now. The war of all wars. A war for your minds, hearts, consciousness, spirit, souls, and our very existence. Where freedom of choice will also be rendered a conspiracy theory of old romantics. Keep your distance? Bollocks to that. Keep your dissidence. And ultimately, rise up. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.